Ghana launched a domestic debt exchange program on Monday with the hope that the move would help restore the country's macroeconomic stability and end the West African country's worst economic crisis in a generation. Now, under the domestic debt exchange, local bonds will be exchanged for new ones maturing in 2027, 2029, 2032, and 2037, with their annual coupon set starting at 0% in 2023 and gradually increasing to 10% in 2025 until maturity. Ken Ofori-Atta, Ghana's finance minister, said the government wants to minimize the impact of the debt swap on small investors and has exempted all treasury bills from the exchange program. This means that treasury bills holders will receive the full value of their investments upon maturity. Additionally, there will be no haircuts on the principal of bonds, and individuals holding such bonds would not be affected. Ghana has apparently finished its debt sustainability analysis, but there is no information on plans for foreign debt that international creditors are anxiously waiting for. Joining me from Accra, Ghana is Emmanuel Amoah-Darkwah, economist and partner at C-KADD Global. Emmanuel, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
So while we know it's in the early day, the domestic debt exchange program was just launched yesterday. In fact, we could say in the early hours. In terms of the general sentiment and sort of the reception around the plan that Ghana's government has put forth, what's been that reception? What's been the sentiment and sort of the feelings and emotions around this plan?
Okay, thank you very much. Globally, debt restructuring has been met with stiff opposition. So just like what happens in other parts of the world, in Ghana, after the announcement, there have been some level of contestation, especially from labor front. Yesterday, the Trade Unions Congress, that is the mother body of the labor unions, had to issue a statement contesting the terms and conditions of this exchange program. Also, the minority in parliament has also issued a statement also contesting statement. So just like what happens in other parts of the world, it has also been met with stiff opposition and contestation.
So if there's opposition and contestation to this, what then would those who are not in favor have government do instead? If there's no restructuring, what's the alternative for Ghana?
For now, that is the option government has taken, and it's also largely because of the level of consultations with the various stakeholders. And so should government have consulted broadly, I think it would have reduced the level of contestations coming from labor and minority in parliament and other stakeholders. But the option as we have on the table now is for us to do a debt restructuring because of our ballooning debt. And this is also part of, as a result of our debt sustainability analysis. As you know, Ghana has applied for the 17th stabilization program from the IMF. And as part of this program, you have to do debt sustainability analysis. And the results points that government has to do debt restructuring. What we have now is a domestic debt restructuring that has been announced. Government has hinted that in the coming days, the external side of our debt restructuring will also be announced. Negotiations for that are still ongoing.
So let's look at who Ghana is paying special attention to with this debt swap, as it may be. And they've really focused, we've heard from the Minister of Finance, that they're really hoping to minimize, completely even limit the risk to domestic debt holders. So that includes those holding government bonds, small investors, individuals, and even other vulnerable groups. Why sort of what seems to be special attention to these class of investors from Ghana's government?
I must say that the percentage of these group is quite smaller. Largely, it is institutional investors. And so, per the program, it is going to affect institutional investors. But let me be quick to state that individuals have invested in various institutions, i.e. mutual funds, i.e. collective securities. And if the debt restructuring is going to affect these institutions, it means that individuals are going to be affected in that regard. And so, for example, if I buy a share in a mutual fund in Data Bank or Ecobank EDC, because of this debt exchange program, it is going to affect first the interest and also the tenor of that investment that I have made with this collective investment scheme. So it is not largely that individuals are going to be exempted from this restructuring, but it is institutional, but individuals have made investments into these institutions, and they are going to also have some level of impact.
Okay. So this program involves holders of domestic debts voluntarily, and we'll get to how important that voluntary part is in a bit, exchanging about 137 billion Ghana cedis of Ghana's domestic notes and bonds for the new ones to be issued by the government. So for many people, we need to explain the how this will actually help Ghana in the long run, because the large question also is, will this also help in restoring Ghana's capacity to service its debt? It's the how of what's the plan is. So what is exactly going to happen with this plan, and how will the plan help Ghana in the short, medium, and long term?
Definitely it's going to help Ghana, because as I speak to you now, Ghana is using about 70% of tax revenue to amortize its debt, which means is that it's causing a lot of fiscal rigidities in our budget. Once government is able to go through this debt restructuring, it's supposed to ease the impact of amortization of this debt in the short term to medium term. But of course, I must be quick to say that the impact on the economy is going to be there because of the level of investment that banks, pension funds, companies that are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, all these are institutions that have made investments into these government bonds. And so they are going to be impacted. And to a larger extent, it's also going to affect the economy. I must say that these are early days for us to know the outcome of how it's going to happen.
Yes.
I know that government is going to do broad consultations even after the announcement, because of the level of contestation, especially coming from Labour and the opposition party, because it's a long-term measure to free government of the current impact as a result of the interest they are paying on government debt.
So I find it interesting that there have been some definitive statements that we've heard from the government as well, particularly the finance minister. So treasury bonds are completely exempted, and all holders are expected to be paid the face value of their investments on maturity. The finance minister also said there will be no haircuts on the principal of bonds, and individual holders of bonds will not be affected. But you're giving a guarantee when you really don't control a large part of the things that will go into this equation. So Emmanuel, can this be something that Ghana absolutely guarantees domestic debt holders, domestic bond holders, when it comes to this situation?
These are early days yet, but I believe that per government analysis, they will be able to guarantee investments coming from treasury bill. Normally, treasury bill duration is 91 days, 182, and then 364. So government is quite confident that they will be able to guarantee first the principal and also the interest that will accrue on these investments. But for bond holders, it can be 2-year bond, 5-year, 10-year bond. That is where government is saying that there have to be some restructuring in terms of the coupon and then in terms of the tenure. But these early days yet for us to totally guarantee that it's really going to happen, and government will be able to stick to their plan to pushing these short-term investors.
So in announcing the domestic debt exchange program, the minister also announced the establishment of a financial stability fund, which they said is to provide liquidity support to banks, pension funds, insurance companies, all of those, to ensure they are able to meet their obligations to their clients as they fall due. What details, if any further than the statement that the minister made, do we have about this fund? How would it be accessed? What requirements might there be for any of these class of individuals or institutions, as it may be, to be able to access the FSF?
The statement released by the Minister of Finance, it is going to follow suit from a statement by the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana is going to announce some amount of money to serve as a cushion in terms of liquidity when these institutional investors, their investors come to them to redeem their investment. And so we don't know the details yet, but what we know is that this is going to be done in partnership with development partners. So we look forward to the details as to how much government is going to contribute, how much the central bank will contribute, and more importantly, how much development partners will contribute to this stability fund, so that we don't have liquidity challenges as we go through this domestic exchange program.
So as the days go by, we're getting more and more information in terms of how Ghana wants to deal with this debt crisis. It was last week that the minister presented the budgets. We broke that apart with you as well. But this domestic debt exchange is just one more piece, one more part of this comprehensive agenda to restore debt and financial stability. When you're looking at things, and we're still waiting to see what happens with foreign creditors, but as these pieces sort of come together, we see a clearer picture. Do you think Ghana is on the right track? What are the main points of this plan for you that seem to really be hitting the nail on the head?
Well, I must say that this program is not an event, but it's a process. And so it depends on the various bits and pieces in terms of policy formulation by government to resolve the crisis that Ghana is in. I believe that once we're able to go through this exchange program, unfortunately, that is the option government has taken. The other options may be to cut expenditure further, because once your revenue is underperforming, you look forward to cutting expenditure so that you reduce your budget deficit and, more importantly, reduce your stock of public debt. And so the government has chosen the path of domestic exchange program. I look forward to complementary programs from them, especially on the fiscal side, to bring down expenditure so that you'll be able to reduce the volumes of debt you will be accumulating into the medium to long term.
So Ghana is not the first country to exchange or to engage in a domestic debt program. You also had Jamaica and Greece, which also engaged in this, and it was successful for the former and not successful for the other. When you look at the opportunity or the exchange program as it is and the opportunities for success, what do you think it is? Do you think that we can measure success, or what would we use to measure the success of this debt exchange? Again, it's in the early hours, it's in the early days, but as we go along, there are still some criteria, some check marks that we'll be looking to tick off to ensure that what the government has planned is exactly what is going to happen.
That's a good question. Ghana has chosen the approach of Jamaica. So Jamaica did this in the past and had to do voluntary, debt exchange. So all these bondholders, to the tune of 137 billion Ghana cedis, government wants to issue to new bonds. So that is the approach that government of Ghana has taken. We look forward to the success of it, but it depends also on what government will do in the short to medium term, in terms of transparency in communication, in terms of broader consultation with the various stakeholders, in terms of fiscal discipline, in terms of timely communication, and more importantly, depoliticizing the process of debt exchange. I think if government is able to do some of the things that I have mentioned, we'll be able to go through this exchange program successfully, and then it will be a success.
All right, Emmanuel, my final question. We don't know what the plan for the foreign creditors will look like. And the minister said that an external debt restructuring program will be presented later. But if we were to take a page from what we're seeing with the domestic debt exchange program, what do you think this one for the foreign creditors and foreign holders possibly might be comprised of? I want you to look into your crystal ball, see if you can help me put together make your prediction on that.
Well, it's going to follow suit. I believe that in terms of institutional investors, on the foreign side, negotiations are going to be very difficult. But in terms of bilateral loans, let's say Ghana has gotten a loan from China or the US or the I think that one, it is not difficult to do. The negotiation is going to be on bilateral level. But at the institutional level, a lot of investors are putting their resources, for example, have invested in Eurobonds. Conversations and negotiations can be very difficult and can be very tough and can be very protracted as well. And so I look forward to, on the easy side, the bilateral loans will be able to restructure in terms of first the coupon rate and also in terms of the tenor, so that going forward you'll be able to bring back investor confidence in the medium to long term, because Ghana will continue to go onto the international market to borrow. But it depends on the approach you are going to use in the debt restructuring, so that you don't also destroy the investor confidence that these external investors have in the economy. So in looking into the crystal ball, it is going to follow suit in terms of coupon rate reduction, and also in terms of elongating the tenure of these bonds and these market bonds that they have issued to these investors.
All right, so we see that Ghana does have a long road of recovery ahead of it, but along the way, we're seeing some interesting landmarks, and of course, we'll continue those conversations as they come up. Emmanuel, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
All right. And many people would be worried as to how in just 2 short years, Ghana has gone from one of the most standout African economies during the COVID-19 pandemic to this. The gold, crude oil, and of course, cocoa producer, one of the largest cocoa producers in the world, is facing a tough time, the harshest economic crisis in a generation. But there have been plans announced by the government to see it through this. Will those plans bear fruit? We'll be following that journey and that long road to recovery along with Ghana.